Chapter 108, The Island, Hanyu's POV. Hanyu hadn't really expected to get this far. In fact, he didn't think he would have had the courage, stupidity, to attempt this unauthorized jaunt to the island if he'd actually thought he might succeed. He'd approached some unfamiliar gods, one tall and hefty and the other a woman with a round, sharp face, as they prepared to board a rowboat. His practiced speech had spilled easily from his lips as they turned to face him. "Forgive me for troubling you, my lords," he said in his sweetest, prettiest voice. "But Lord Antony is my master, and—" "We know," the sharp-faced god had said, and the other had hushed her and told Hanyu to continue. Hanyu had been surprised to be recognized, but pushed forward nonetheless. "May your servant be permitted to come ashore with you, my lords? My master has ordered me to fetch some things from the storehouse." "Of course," said the bigger god. "Poor Lord Antony has enough to worry about right now without running errands. Climb aboard, then." Shocked by his own success, Hanyu had obeyed. He hadn't realized until he was sitting in the boat as the gods lowered it carefully into the sea how certain he'd been that he would be refused. Now the gods were rowing the boat over the dark waters towards a steadily growing inky mass that had to be the island, and it was much too late to back out. The two gods were speaking to each other in low voices as they rowed. Ordinarily, Hanyu would have been tempted to try to listen in, but the rocking of the tiny boat and his own jumbled feelings of excitement and nerves and remorse and anger left little room for nosiness. Instead, Hanyu glanced back at the ship and was shocked to see how huge it loomed, how many of the stars, so bright on this moonless night, were blotted out by its mass. It seemed bigger than he'd remembered it being when it towered so forbiddingly over the Taishan harbor. Back then, it had been a terrifying, tantalizing unknown, but now it was home. He'd been happier and cozier on that monstrous boat than he'd known it was possible for a person to be. And now he was leaving it, unauthorized and in a way that was sure to get him into enormous trouble, because stupid Antony and Asao were ruining everything. He shouldn't let thoughts of them ruin his expedition. They certainly weren't spending all their time fretting over him. No, Hanyu needed to focus on the island. He couldn't let his first visit to a new land be tainted by sadness or hurt. This was his chance to see something wonderful and strange, something no priest had ever seen or even dreamed of. And if he was punished for it, good. Antony couldn't be bothered to discipline him for the last time he'd gone off alone against orders, so maybe even this wouldn't be enough to remind the god that he had an attendant. Still, I'm not thinking about him. He was on an adventure, damn it, and what was the point of all this ridiculous disobedience if he didn't even enjoy it? "Almost there," the sharp-faced god grunted, and Hanyu bowed his head in acknowledgement. "Thank you for your kindness, my lords," he said automatically. Why was it so much easier to remember his manners with strangers? "It's nothing," the larger god said, and even in the darkness Hanyu caught a glimpse of his face glancing at him in what seemed like a nervous way. "We're glad to be able to do something to help. Tell Lord Antony that, would you? Let him know we're happy to help if there's anything that can be done." Hanyu bent lower over his seat. "Of course, my lord." "Happy to help? He said some things earlier as well. Poor Lord Antony? Enough to worry about? What does all that mean?" "If I may, my lord," he ventured, heart pounding with sudden dread. "I haven't heard any news since my master left for Lord Titus's ship." "Titus isn't well," the sharp-faced god interjected. "I don't know the details. Someone said he might be coming with us. I don't know any more than that." "Not well? What did that even mean? The gods couldn't get sick, and any injury healed quickly." "Anyhow, Lord Titus was alive. Nothing short of death would last long for a god. Antony would be fine." Hanyu was overtaken by a great rush of relief that, strangely enough, made him angry again. He wished this bizarre knot of tension in his gut would loosen and let him get back to his usual self, but it just seemed to draw tighter with every moment that Antony wasn't with him. Am I upset that he hasn't noticed I'm gone? That doesn't even make any sense. He's on a whole other ship. What is wrong with me tonight? Whatever it was, it had brought Hanyu to his first foreign land. There was a sudden sound of grinding as the rowboat's wooden bottom hit the edge of a long, shadowy beach. "Stay in the boat," the hefty god commanded as he set down his oar. "Humans can get sick if they get wet." "Only if they get cold, too," corrected the other god, but they both splashed out of the boat and pulled it up with Hanyu sitting inside until it rested well beyond even the largest swells of the tide. Looking around, Hanyu could make out little of the island in the moonless night. It seemed huge and flat, as Antony had said, with little to break up the dark beach besides a few large rocks and a row of little boats, which Hanyu's boat had now joined. "You can get out now," said the sharp-faced god. Hanyu obeyed, clambering hastily over the side. His bare foot encountered a surprisingly rough, cold surface, which shifted and rolled dangerously beneath him, sharp edges jabbing and poking. This was so unlike the sandy beaches of home that Hanyu let out a startled yelp. It was all rocks underfoot. "Tell me you didn't turn your ankle already," the smaller god groaned. "Gala," the other god scolded her. "Of course he did. He can't see a thing, and he's not even wearing any shoes." The bigger god sounded sympathetic, but Hanyu preferred Lord Gala, despite her obvious irritation. She spoke to him instead of about him. At least she did it more often than the other god did. Hanyu was used to being spoken about as if he weren't present, but his months of being spoiled with Antony's attention had left him with a decided preference for a more direct address. "Oh, Lord Gala groaned. "You're right. Why in the world didn't you wear shoes, boy?" Hanyu stooped into a bow, though he didn't kneel. Maybe he should have, but he didn't want to put his hands or knees on all those sharp rocks. "I'm sorry, my lord," he cried. "I didn't think." In all his happy imaginings of the island, he'd pictured sandy beaches like the ones he was used to. He remembered now that Antony had said it was rocky, but he'd pictured a few large rocks, not innumerable small ones. He shifted on his protesting feet, which only made things worse. Lord Gala heaved a sigh. "Right, I see that. Give him your shoes, Festus." Lord Festus sounded as stunned as Hanyu felt. "My what?" "Your shoes! Mine are too small. We can't carry him without touching him, and he can't make it over these stones barefoot. Can you, boy?" Maybe, my lord," Hanyu faltered. Lord Gala snorted. "For goodness sakes, just give him the shoes. We can't give Antony's beloved new human back with bloody feet." Beloved. Hanyu almost released a bitter laugh at that choice of words. At best he was tolerated. When had that stopped being enough? When had he grown so selfish and demanding? Lord Festus obeyed his companion's directions and quickly divested himself of his footwear. Hanyu pulled on his heavy boots, which were soaked with seawater and a little too big, but nevertheless provided a welcome barrier from the sharp stones of the beach. He bowed low, feeling a little guilty as he saw Lord Festus's feet now stocking-clad on the rocks. "I'm very grateful, my lords," he began. "As soon as we're in the storehouse—" "Who knows what might be spilled or broken on that floor?" Lord Gala interrupted him. "You'd better keep them until you're back on board." "I'll be fine," Lord Festus said cheerfully, though Hanyu heard him hiss under his breath a few times as they traveled up the stony beach. They were almost at the doorway by the time Hanyu noticed it. It pointed straight up from the ground, like the lid of a box. At first glance, it seemed like nothing so much as a gaping maw, and Hanyu found his bravado sorely tested by the thought of climbing inside. But as he peered closer, he could see light glowing faint and sullen somewhere deep within. There were steps beyond the doorway, worn smooth with time and tread. Hanyu took them gingerly, grateful for the presence of his two new friends. However, his nerves eased as they descended and the light grew brighter. Damn, his absurd plan had actually worked. He was on the island and about to step into the storehouse of the gods. He didn't need Antony to take him places at all. He could get by perfectly well all on his own.